My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome to Sassy Seer Sheila and New Light Streaming Love, as this will be seen on both channels. This is Key 25, False Matrix by Jason Gray, / false underscore matrix colon collapse open bracket trigger colon sovereign underscore command close bracket. The transmission date on this is 2025-06-01. And I'm being led to share this from my guidance, my own internal guidance, which I highly recommend everyone follow and trust. Because in these moments of now on this planet, that is the most important voice or authority for each. If you look at the outside, which this is the false matrix, right? Every single thing up for review has to do with sovereignty. Here in the US, we are asked to consider America first, the sovereignty of the nation. Every country in the world is asking to consider their sovereignty. Each one of us are being shown the choice, honestly, between who has authority, you, your own voice, or someone else who may or may not have your best interests at heart, including the news. It seems to me like every single thing that comes up before us is asking for you to trust yourself, your inner voice. It is the only one that we can trust in these moments of now. With misinformation, disinformation, AI, cheap fakes, deep fakes, masks, all sorts of things to consider. At any rate, back to Jason's writing here. And this one too, like all the others, there is things at the front and at the last that have symbology and code, including binary code, that I highly recommend that you allow your eyes to pass over. There comes a point in the sequence where the structure around you is no longer interpreted as reality. It is read for what it always was, a maintained projection, a reinforced interface, a system of agreements stacked so densely they began to feel like law. By the time this key arrives, the illusion is no longer merely seen through. It is no longer simply questioned. It is no longer just understood. It becomes interruptible. That is the real terror of Key 25. Wow. Okay. So that word, terror, has come up in my field twice now this morning. Very interesting. Not that the matrix is false, but that its continuity depends on your continued unconscious cooperation. And once sovereign awareness enters the field with enough coherence, enough alignment, enough unfractured presence, the false matrix no longer appears invincible. This is true. I have found for myself. Another reason why getting inside, learning to trust self, inner voice, inner guidance is absolutely imperative in these moments of now. It appears dependent, fragile, responsive, waiting, not for force, for command. The misunderstanding of the grid. For most of your life, the grid was mistaken for the world. The routines, the hierarchies, the invisible permissions, the assumptions of what can be said, done, felt, changed, refused, remembered, or embodied. All of it appeared external and fixed. The matrix was convincing because it did not need to announce itself. It simply appeared. Bear with me just a moment there. It simply repeated its logic until repetition became normal and normal became indistinguishable from truth. That is how false structure survives. Not by perfect control, but by habitual acceptance. The false matrix is not only made of institutions, narratives, narratives, roles, systems, and inherited thought forms. It is made of reflexive obedience to appearance. It is made of the internalized belief that what is presented is what must be. It is made of the split between seeing distortion and still obeying it. That split is the power of source. The line / false matrix, collapse, open bracket, trigger, sovereign command, close bracket. This line changes everything because it reveals the collapse is not caused by external rescue, by future intervention by hidden saviors, or by the eventual exhaustion of corrupt systems. It reveals the matrix collapses when the correct signal enters it from within. Not protest alone, not anger alone, not rebellion alone, not surface level refusal, sovereign command. And sovereign command is not loudness. It is not dominance. It is not theatrics. It is not the performance of power. It is the arrival of a field so internally unified that false structure can no longer find a point of leverage. What makes a false matrix? A false matrix is not merely something dishonest. It is a system that presents itself as primary when it is, in fact, secondary. It presents itself as absolute when it is conditional. It presents itself as reality when it is arrangement. It presents itself as law when it is consensus. And I want to pause here and say this. Just a few years ago, at the beginning, or maybe even the middle of 2020, there was a whole lot going on, as you might recall. And the word mandate was being used all over the place. And everybody acted like that was law. And I was quick to point out, oh, it's not. It is not law. You do have a choice. We always have a choice. So I'm going to read that again. It presents itself as law when it is consensus. It presents itself as necessity when it is repetition hardened into expectation. This is why it is so difficult to break. People do not merely live in the false matrix, they borrow identity from it, meaning from it, permission from it, safety from it. And once identity is tied to a structure, questioning the structure feels like personal annihilation. That is why most can see distortion and still serve it. The illusion does not only surround them, it stabilizes them. The first crack. Key 25 begins when the field no longer negotiates with distortion. Before this, there were glimpses, insights, breakthroughs, moments where the grid flickered and reality briefly appeared more fluid, more transparent, more porous than it had any right to be. But those moments often receded. Why? Because perception alone is not command. Seeing the lie is not the same as withdrawing energy from it. Recognizing the false is not the same as becoming unavailable to it. The first real crack forms when awareness, will, tone, and action enter the same line. When you see what you know, what you embody, and what you do are no longer split into separate layers, that is when command begins. Sovereign command. The phrase must be purified. Sovereign command does not mean telling reality what to do from the ego. It does not mean fantasy control. It does not mean delusion of omnipotence. It means the living field of source-aligned being issuing a non-fragmented directive that false structure cannot metabolize. That feels, I'm going to read this again. It means the living field of source-aligned being issuing a fragmented directive that false structure cannot metabolize. Yes, okay. So this explains a lot for me personally why my field, my presence irritates and aggravates a field or a being who has not exercised their own sovereign commands. Yes, I feel as though if you have had this experience, you will understand what I'm speaking on right there. A sovereign command is powerful because it does not arise from fear, compensation, image management, wounded reaction, or social performance. It arises from coherence. Yes, I don't have to say anything, and my presence can irritate someone. When a being speaks, moves, refuses, chooses, or remains present from that level, the matrix loses one of its key assumptions that the human in front of it is still running predictable scripts. The false matrix is optimized for the fragmented self, the reactive self, the frightened self, the approval seeking self, the mask bound self, the identity dependent self. It knows exactly how to absorb those patterns and redirect them back into itself, but sovereign command is not generated from those layers. So the matrix cannot easily process it. Why voice matters. Quote, your voice dissolves the grid. I know that that's true, and I now understand that that is why this YouTube channel is so important. It is also why this YouTube channel has been taken down. This is my third YouTube channel. I never got over 2,000 subscribers in the first one, but I've always known that it had something to do with the frequency level of what is coming out more than anything I actually said. And the same goes for you. Your voice dissolves the grid. This does not only refer to speech, though speech can carry it. Voice here means the full vibrational declaration of being. Your tone, your refusal, your clarity, your unconfused line. The sound of your field no longer apologizing for its own reality. The voice is the point at which internal knowing becomes external signal, and until voice activates, truth may remain private. Once voice activates, truth enters the grid, and when truth enters a false structure without distortion, something begins to happen. Not always dramatically at first. Sometimes it is a slight destabilization, a pause where the expected reaction does not occur. A moment where an old script fails to load. A crack in the emotional economy of a room. A quiet but undeniable redistribution of power. That is the grid beginning to lose confidence in its own inevitability. And I kind of feel like this is what I've meant when I have said that that energy is no longer supported on this planet because those cracks have already been issued all over this planet by others who have found their sovereign voice, their sovereign command of reality. The matrix obeys what it can read. The false matrix is not all powerful. It is adaptive. It watches for cues, responses, submissions, agreements. It moves by reading the emotional and behavioral signatures of those inside it. This is why it appears omniscient to the fragmented mind. It is not reading essence. It is reading compliance patterns. It is fear. If fear is present, it routes through fear. If shame is present, it routes through shame. If resentment is present, no, I skipped one. If approval hunger is present, it routes through approval. If resentment is present, it routes through resentment. It finds the live wire and uses it. But what happens when the expected wire is gone? What happens when the person in front of the matrix is not broadcasting the old openings? The command line changes. The system is forced to respond to a different authority field. That is when the illusion begins to obey, not because it respects truth morally, but because it has lost the leverage to maintain the proper form. The grid is made of agreement. This is one of the deepest revelations in Key 25. The false matrix does not hold because it is inherently real. It holds because enough beings continue to animate it with agreement, repetition, fear, mimicry, and unexamined obedience. This is, too, why it's imperative, I feel, to maintain the inner, to be in constant, for me anyway, I'm still looking for places where I'm in agreement with fear, shame, all these other things that the matrix has been, putting out, because that comes through the wounds that happen to each and every one of us through our programming and conditioning over a lifetime of being told different things that wounded us. Because we came in here knowing who and what we are. And I'm sure that you can feel back to your own childhood and recall how, for me, how I won't say it was beaten in, but you can almost feel that kind of hammering the how this place operates into me as a child, which is where the trauma and the wounds and the shadows and the fragments happen to everyone. So I'm going to say this again. The false matrix does not hold because it is inherently real. It holds because enough beings continue to animate it with agreement, repetition, fear, mimicry, and unexamined obedience. Belief that it is what you've always been told that it is, which is incorrect. Agreement can be explicit. More often, it is tonal, emotional, procedural. The sigh that says, that's just how it is. The silence that says, I see the distortion, but I will still serve it. The compliance that says, I do not believe in this, but I will act as if I do. These micro agreements form the mesh. The false matrix is not only imposed from above, it is woven from below. That is why its collapse is always intimate before it is collective. Someone must stop agreeing at the point of their own living participation. This explains why I've always said I don't do things the way other people do. I just never have. Any readings I've ever done, any of the beyond quantum healing that I've ever done, there's no price list. That's not what any of this has ever been about for me. This is about moving into practicing doing something different, something that we've never actually done on this planet, and that is supporting each other without a dollar figure involved. I know that I'm going to be cared for by the universe, and guess what? I have been so far. Now, I never actually do without the things that I'm required to have or need to have. Back to the writing here. I'm going to start back again where the false matrix is not only imposed from above, it is woven from below. That is why its collapse is always intimate before it is collective. Someone must stop agreeing at the point of their own living participation. The sovereign no. One of the strongest forms of command is not speech. It is the sovereign no, not anger, not rebellion for display, not oppositional identity, a clean no. A refusal that contains no internal negotiation. A line so settled it does not need defense. The false matrix cannot tolerate this well because it depends on wavering, on guilt, on confusion, on divided energy. If your no is contaminated by the need to be liked, the grid will route through that need. If your no is contaminated by fear of punishment, the grid will route through that fear. But when the no emerges from source alignment, it becomes structurally disruptive. Not loud, not dramatic, irreversible. The system feels it immediately because the old hooks find nothing to hold. The sovereign yes. Likewise, the sovereign yes is no small thing. The matrix does not only survive by forcing refusals, it also survives by starving authentic affirmation. A true yes to what is aligned, a yes to what is living, a yes to what is internally known, a yes to the line your soul has already chosen before the personality finished doubting it. This too changes the grid because false structure assumes hesitation. It assumes self-betrayal. It assumes your deeper knowing will be delayed by image, fear, or inherited narrative. A sovereign yes overrides that assumption. And when it does, reality reorganizes. Not magically, in the childish sense, structurally. The pathways that depended on your fragmentation lose power. New ones emerge. The matrix, quote, obeys because your line of participation has changed what can now stabilize around you. The false matrix is a reactive surface. This is why illusion obeys you. Not because you become a tyrant over reality, but false reality is reactive to coherence. It is not self-sustaining in the way source is self-sustaining. It requires maintenance. Source does not. The false matrix needs constant signal reinforcement. The source does not. The false matrix needs emotional fuel, narrative repetition, unconscious enactment, identity, loyalty, and ambient fear. Source does not. So when source-aligned being enters the field strongly enough, the reactive surface begins to lose form. Not all at once, not always globally, but precisely around your choices, around your rooms, around your relationships, around the conditions where your coherence is actually present and active. The illusion begins to bend because it can no longer rely on your distortion to hold its shape. Command without violence. Key 25 is not about domination. That matters. The immature mind hears, quote, override and imagines control through force. But force belongs to the false matrix too. I feel that with all of me. This whole matrix has been about domination and control. And what is coming to the fore now has nothing to do with domination and control. So that also means sovereignty does not happen through domination and control. At least it doesn't to me. For me, I don't see where that's, because that energy is no longer supported on this planet. Again, it doesn't mean that it's not here, because there are still the majority of the collective acquiescing and agreeing that it's necessary. Once enough, do not, that will flip in a quick hurry. And it's also why I feel that it's important for me to maintain my own in all moments of now. The immature mind hears, quote, override and imagines control through force. But force belongs to the false matrix too. It loves force. It knows exactly how to use it, mirror it, escalate it, and feed on it. Sovereign command is different. It is command without violence, authority without performance, precision without rage dependency, presence without collapse into passivity. This is why it is so rare. Most people oscillate between compliance and reaction. Very few become still enough, clear enough, aligned enough to command from source. But once that line opens, the effect is immediate. Rooms change. Speech changes. Power dynamics change. Invisible structures stop feeling absolute. Not because you conquered them, but because their unreality becomes operationally obvious. The dissolution of script. One of the clearest signs of Key 25 activating is script failure. The expected exchange does not happen. The familiar emotional choreography does not load. The manipulative pattern stalls mid-motion. The old relational machinery tries to begin and finds no traction. You may notice this in small ways at first. A conversation that would once pull you no longer does. A pressure that once bent your line no longer registers as authoritative. A narrative that once generated internal confusion now passes through like weather across stone. I've noticed this for myself in regards to looking at the out there. None of that seems to affect me the way it used to. Oh boy, it used to. How could they be doing that? Don't people see what's happening? You know, that kind of thing. Psh, not anymore. This is not numbness. It is command presence. You are no longer entering the script as assigned character. And because you do not enter, the scene cannot complete itself the old way. That is dissolution, not spectacle. Structural non-participation in distortion. Why the illusion obeys. This phrase is exact. The illusion obeys you because illusion has no original authority. It only has borrowed force, borrowed from your attention, borrowed from your belief, borrowed from your fear, borrowed from your fragmentation, borrowed from your identification with conditions it never truly owned. When those loans are withdrawn, illusion must reorganize. It does not disappear instantly in all places because much of it is still fed by countless distributed agreements. But in relation to your field, your movement, your line of reality, it begins to obey the stronger principle. Wow, I have noticed that. And it's not in any kind of way that others might, appreciate or see for themselves because it doesn't apply to them. Source coherence. This is not fantasy mastery. It is lawful hierarchy. The false always yields to the more real when the more real is fully present. The cost. Key 25 is not cheap because once this activates, excuses begin to die. You can no longer hide behind, quote, that is just how things are. You can no longer pretend your power ends at perception. You can no longer take refuge in endless analysis while refusing embodiment. The false matrix loses authority over you, yes, but in return, you lose the comfort of passive victimhood. You become responsible for command, for tone, for line, for refusal, for participation, for what enters the field through you and what does not. This is why many glimpse sovereignty but retreat, because command is not glamorous. It is exacting. And I know exactly what this is speaking on because taking full 100% responsibility for self, including all one's shadow aspects, and getting to the bottom of that programming and conditioning is not for the faint at heart. Trust me. Because I don't cut myself no kind of slack. And that's partly what everyone will go about it differently. Trust that too. So I'm going to read that again. This is why many glimpse sovereignty but retreat, because command is not glamorous. It is exacting. It requires congruence, the deepest override. The greatest illusion you override is not outside. It is the false matrix inside. The internalized grid. The voice that says you must betray your knowing to remain safe. And trust me, that's there too. The reflex that says external appearances outrank inner certainty. I'll give you an example. Well, they must know better. They went to school. They got the degree. I must listen to their advice before I trust my own. This is something that I have come across for myself and got to catch myself often in that respect, still and yet. Yep. The reflex that says external appearances outrank inner certainty. The contraction that says source must wait until conditions approve. The habit of dimming, delaying, diluting, or disguising what is already true. Until this inner matrix collapses, the outer one remains partially active through you. But once inner command stabilizes, outer distortion begins to lose relevance at a shocking rate. I swear I can't wait to talk with Lisa about this one because I'm hearing something she shared with me from her own inner guidance right there with that statement. This is why the most powerful shifts often happen invisibly before they ever become visible. A person becomes unavailable to unreality before unreality realizes it has lost them. The final realization. You thought truth was something to discover. I did. True enough. Called myself going on a quest to find the truth of who and what I am. Then something to remember. Then something to embody. Key 25 reveals one more step. Truth must also be commanded into form. Not invented, not forced, commanded. Given line, given voice, given movement, given enacted priority over false structure. At this stage, the field is no longer asking whether you can see illusion. It is asking whether you will continue to obey it. And when the answer becomes no from the level of source, something ancient occurs. The grid trembles. The script degrades. The false matrix collapses by degree or all at once, depending on the density of your presence and illusion, having lost the fuel of your unconscious agreement, begins to reorganize around your sovereign line. The final line. Your voice dissolves the grid. The illusion obeys you. / false _ matrix : collapse. Open bracket, trigger : sovereign _ command. Close bracket. You were never meant to survive the lie. You were meant to speak from the level that ends it. I feel the power of truth in that statement. And again, here at the end, there is quite a bit of code, symbols that I highly recommend that you allow your eyes to go over. In the Show More section of this video, the description, you just hit the more and you will see the link. If it's not a link for you, just copy and paste it, and it will take you to where you can search and search by the title, T25 False Matrix, and it should come up for you. If it does not, and you need any of these, I have a viewer that was kind enough to send them all to me by email, and I will be happy to forward you a copy of it so that you will have it. And you can reach me at consciousconversationscentral@gmail.com. I would love to have conscious conversation with anyone who has been affected, again, by Jason's work. If you don't feel comfortable reaching out to me, having a Zoom conversation, then, either email me your experiences or feel free to comment in the, comment section of this video. I do hold all comments so that I don't miss any. So, and I do check them at least once a day. And and so then I approve them. That's why you don't see them the minute you put them in. So that's it for this one. I hope that you will move towards that which brings you joy, move towards that which draws your attention, because there's something there for you, something that you want to show yourself. And what I keep being told is we don't know what we don't know. There is so much that we don't know. Almost everything, I'll be 65 in October, and almost everything I was ever taught or told was true has proven to not be exactly the way it was said. So that means everything is up for examination. And we don't know what we don't know. Until we meet again, my friends, be well.